Welcome to The Ethical Stitch, where fashion meets integrity and style gets a conscience. I'm your host, Michelle Alleyne, fashion strategist, educator, and sustainability geek. Let's unravel what it really means to create, shop, and live ethically. Well, hey everyone, and welcome back to The Ethical Stitch, the show where fashion gets real, raw, and responsibly redesigned. I'm your host, Michelle Alleyne, and each week we talk about the things that really matter: our planet, the people who power this fashion industry, and the personal style that reflects who we are, with no filters, no fluff, and a whole lot of purpose. So today, our thread count is going to be fabulous. So grab your tea and let's step into the green room, where we kick off our shoes, unzip the garment bags, and dig through the racks of what really matters. This is where the fashion archives come alive, the real stories surface, and the whispers from showrooms' back corners get brought into the spotlight. Think of it as thrifting for truth, because we're not just talking trends, we're unearthing what the industry tries to tuck away. So let's go. I have a spectacular guest today who redefines what it means to be iconic. A style savant, cultural force, and singular visionary who's lived at the crossroads of nightlife, fashion, art, and cultural preservation, and turned all of it into a movement. He's a collector of stories, a master of reinvention, and someone who now calls the vibrant French Quarter home. From electric Miami nights to soulful New York, or from electric Miami nights to soulful New Orleans days, his fashion eye is unmatched, and his instinct for legacy is as well, and it's unshakable. Keni Valenti, our special guest, isn't just a fashion figure, he's an institution. A vintage curator, a visionary, and a walking archive of style who's been preserving the past while championing a more conscious future. From club scenes to couture closets, Keni's journey is stitched with boldness, defiance, and purpose. He's here to remind us that vintage isn't about looking back, it's about looking deeper. It's history, it's sustainability, and it's serious style. So, Keni, welcome.
But that was some introduction. Thank you so much. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, I'd love to ask you a few questions and chit chat.
Okay.
Pick your wonderful brain. So, Keni, you've built a celebrated career spotlighting vintage fashion. Was sustainability a part of what drew you to the vintage world? Or did you
Well,
realize along the way that how powerful vintage is as a sustainable choice?
when I started very young with vintage, like I was telling you earlier, that my mom used to go out garbage picking to furnish our house on garbage day. And she would fill her her car with rugs. People would do wall to wall carpeting. So she would take that carpet and she'd lay it down. So our whole basement was a patchwork of rugs and couches and chairs and end tables and plus she was a thrift shopper on top of it. So she just did it because she didn't have the money. So that's how it started. And then I really got into thrift shopping. Like I grew up in Corona, Queens, which was an amazing time. I mean, Louis Armstrong was a neighbor. It was just a melting pot. You were talking the early 60s. So it was like a melting pot of everybody. There was so much racism in the world where there were Italians and Chinese and Jewish and, would all mix together. You know what I mean? So it's a real melting pot of all these kind of people. And I was a good Catholic schoolboy. And I had a second cousin who started a rock band in the 70s named Johnny Ginzali, who started a band called the New York Dolls with David Johansen. And, he was also into thrifting too. So, I mean, So as a kid, I would get these clothes and put together looks, and just everybody would be like, "My God, who are you?" I used to run around like, the hotel scene. I was a paparazzi when I was 16,
Wow.
and like people like Ronnie Wood actually came up to me from the Rolling Stones and said, "Who are you? Like, you're fabulous. Who's your stylist?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I don't know, even know what you're talking about." But also, Mark Bolan said the same thing for me of T Rex. So I was just dressing all crazy and always collecting vintage clothing. I lived in Westchester for a moment where the thrift shops were really good, and
Mhm.
I always collected. Like the first major couture piece was a Courrèges wool and plastic suit that I found for $5 in like the mid 70s, and that really sort of lit my fuse on clothing. I was a clothing designer at one point in my life, which was an accident. I really wanted to be a photographer, but
Wow.
I
How
met
does that happen? An accidental fashion
I
designer.
was one of the original cast of a busboy at Studio 54. Steve Rebell hired me for the opening. And then, like a few weeks later, Ian Strager fired me because I was just dancing. I was wearing little red Adidas shorts and sneakers. So I started to go to this alternative club downtown called the Mud Club on White Street.
Mm.
And the big thing, drugs were part of the lifetime of the late 70s. You know what I mean? Like, it was like alcohol. You take a Quaalude, you have some alcohol. People think, oh, it was bad. It was, everybody was doing it. It was like the culture that we lived in. So I'm in the club, and there's this woman there, this crazy woman. She's got on like three tutus, roller skates, rolling around the dance floor. And I'm dancing with her. And the next thing I know, I'm locked in a cage with her. And she said, "You want to
Love
come
it.
up with me?" And I said, "Sure." And her name was Betsy Johnson. So I went to her loft in the neighborhood, and she said, "Oh, I'm starting a label called Betsy's in with my partner, which was a mutual friend of hers from school, one of her best friends named Chantal White. They started the label Betsy Johnson, and she asked if I would help her because of my style. Like, can you help me, like, with this show?" And I said, "Sure." So we recruited like go-go girls from a local strip bar. The whole thing was amazing. I did all the accessories for the show. That show was like mind-blowing, and we did it. Piper, who had owned Danceteria, who was opening up a new club in Soho called Pravda after the Russian newspaper. And that's where she did the opening of her show and the opening of the club. So, the show went on, and afterwards, everybody runs backstage and they're like, "My God, this was amazing. Who did all these accessories, these hats, jewelry, everything's amazing." And she said, "The little boy in the corner." And I became a fashion star overnight. So I really didn't know that I was going to do that. I wanted to be a photographer. So I met like all the buyers. I met this guy, Emilio Fiorucci, who had a store on 59th Street called Fiorucci, and he asked me to do the accessories. I opened up a shop there, and then I met also the buyers from Bloomingdale's and Macy's and Bonwit Teller, and they all bought my stuff. Then they all said, "Make a clothing line, we'll buy it." So being inspired from the label was called Space a Go Go. You know what I mean? Because it was kind of Jetson-y, kind of fun, but recycling too. Like I would go to Canal Street and buy. People would order plastics and rubber and not pick them up, and they had the Canal Street was like a mecca for all this like extra stuff that they were selling. You ordered like plastic from Canal Plastics. It cost a lot of money, but a lot of times they would get seconds or people would never pick it up, and that's what I was doing. I mean, I was really bad. I was even like breaking aerial antennas off of cars and putting those on hats. I was recycling stuff from the street, like springs, and I go to auto graveyards and get all sorts of great stuff. Due to all of that fact, let me like condense it. I became a fashion designer. I actually could actually say at one moment I walked into the Odeon and somebody said, "There's Keni Valenti." And I said, "Gee, I guess I'm famous." So I go through this whole career. I sign a deal with the Japanese company. The Japanese ate me up and spit me out and almost killed me. And by
Oh my God.
1990, after opening up 15 boutiques in Japan, in
Wow.
1990, I came back and I was exhausted. I was broke. I spent all my money on vacations. You know what I mean? Like, I just lived my life. Like, they gave me millions of dollars, but I spent it. Do you know what it's like to be 24, 25 years old with millions of dollars? I mean, people treat you differently with money. Like,
Sure.
you're a whole other kind of person. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yes.
Anyway, I come
I'm
back
glad
to
you
New
made it
York.
through.
I come back to New York and I meet an old friend of mine who I knew for years. Her name Amanda Lepore,
Okay, so now we're crossing.
and I'm like, Amanda, I'm broke, I'm back, I'm exhausted, I'm about to kill myself. She said, honey, I'll move in and we'll open up like a dungeon. She was working at a dungeon in New York at the time.
Mhm.
Let's do the. She was bringing clients, like very fancy clients, like doctors, lawyers, and I would participate in some of the antics. And you don't even know what
Okay.
you don't want to know what went on, but it was hilarious. And I made money that way. But I also realized that I had collected all these vintage clothes. And not to mention, when I was in Japan, I didn't live in Japan I was supposed to live there for 5 years, but I moved to Paris and I moved to Milan because I realized that I didn't have to live there. I had to produce drawings and patterns. That's all I needed to do for them. When I had collected all of these amazing clothes, like even like in 1985, I went to the first Gautier store in Paris and bought myself like a custom suit that was $5,000. So I kept everything. So I said I should do the flea market. There used to be this amazing flea market on 6th Avenue between 25th and 26th Streets. It's now a residential building, but it
Okay.
was amazing. I mean, you would go there and you'd see Andy Warhol shopping. You would see all sorts of celebrities shopping. I mean, it was amazing.
Was that a
So
parking lot?
it was it was a parking lot. It was a big parking lot. And that's when I started to bring my clothes there and started to sell it. I mean, I had an amazing booth of things that I wore and things that I've collected. And we're talking about Mugler pieces, one-offs, runway pieces, all the stuff that I saved. The third week into it, a girl comes into my booth and she's like, oh my God, whose booth is this? She's kind of screaming, who is this booth? Who owns this booth? And I said, I do. And she said, wait a minute, I know you. And I said, yeah. She goes, I'm Lori Goldstein. Of course, I lived with Lori at one point in my life in the 70s. We were roommates, okay? But I hadn't seen her in 15 years. She said, God, I thought you died of AIDS. I said, no, Lori, I'm still here. She said to me, because we lost everybody too, so many
Yeah,
people.
that's true. That's true.
Thank God I was not in New York from 85 till 90. I was not there. I probably would be dead. Anyway, Lori said, oh my God, she said, I'm starting to work for this woman in Milan who has a luggage company and she wants to start a line of clothes. Will you shop for us? And I was like, will I shop for you 100%? She said, good, call me on Monday. And the woman's name was Mucha Prada.
What? So
Yeah.
you're just doing all the legends.
So
Wow.
from
Let me
what?
ask you more about curation. I mean, you've curated countless iconic pieces. So, what
Yes.
role does storytelling play in preserving fashion's past, and how does that support a more sustainable future?
Well, everybody's doing it today. Like
Mhm.
everybody, like you think about all these younger kids, the millennials and the Z generation, Z, X, Y, and Z. Go to any thrift shop; they're like vultures on the clothes. They all have online stores. They're opening up stores. Sustainability is great. Plus the fact nothing is great anymore. I mean, who are the greatest designers today? We don't have a Yves Saint Laurent. We don't have all these incredible people. The only one left to me is John Galliano. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's the only one in fashion that I can say that like he just makes the most beautiful clothes. When he was working for Dior, I literally cried when I saw some of those shows with Pat McGrath doing
It's
the
true.
makeup. It was just so amazing. It was amazing. Anyway, but getting back to the story, so I started working for Prada, and then word got around, and then I met Johnny Versace, and then I met this one and that one. And I'm from the Studio 54 days, so I started calling up friends of mine, some of the Halstonettes. Do you have any old clothes? Do you have any old clothes? I know this is like 91.
Right.
It wasn't hip to have vintage clothing. They were happy to sell me their Halstons and everything. So I was
So do you think
amassing.
is it different today? Do you think
Yeah, you
it's
can't
more
find all that incredible stuff today. You can't, it's not as easy to find it, you know? That whole generation is dead. You know what I mean? The clothes are, plus the clothing has, it has a lifespan. It disintegrates no matter what you do. I mean, even in museums, it's so, they have to keep it like not hanging on hangers. They have to lie it out in drawers. It's very expensive to store, but it's also a living thing like we are. You know what I mean? Fabric is a living thing. Natural fabrics are a living thing and they eventually die and
it's
disintegrate.
true?
You know what I mean?
It's true.
So yeah. So anyway, I had amassed a collection of like about 20,000 articles of clothing, and I opened up a showroom in the garment center, and that's when I was charging admission to come in as a design lab for designers to copy. So here we got now, this is the weirdest to me. Designers are pulling things from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s and copying it, downright copying it. And if I tell you I worked with everybody, I worked with everybody. I worked with this young man who was an assistant at Gucci when the head designer left, became the designer. His name was Tom Ford. And he
Remember
asked,
that?
yeah, that era. He was like, my finger was in all those collections. It was all Halston. It was all revamped Halston, Giorgio St. Angelo, Stephen Barrows. It was all of those designers they were knocking off. His right hand person was Francisco Costa. I don't know if you know who he is.
Yes.
He was
Calvin
a
Klein.
designer at Calvin, and then he started his own line called Costa Cosmetics or something. And the
Yes.
nicest person, but
Beauty.
he was really Tom's right hand man. He worked with Tom in those years. Anyway, so word got around, and I started working with every designer, and I realized now everybody's copying from the past. But you have to remember, this is a time before social media. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like I've been working with the Real Real now, selling vintage clothing, and because they're taking vintage clothing now because of me, I have to say, you can ask them, it's because of me that there is a
Yeah.
market for it. And
What do you tell today's consumers in terms of vintage?
right
Do
now,
you,
I still,
yeah.
what do I think
Do you
is
think
vintage? Well, they need labels
well,
first of all, because
do
they're the
you
real
think
real. What?
do you think it can compete with fast fashion
Can I?
vintage product?
Well, if somebody has taste and elegance and wants good design, yeah, but fast fashion really stinks. I mean, you should see how much of
I
it goes to the thrift shops. I mean, even here in
yeah.
New Orleans, I see racks of H&M and racks of Zara. A lot of it is just they're trying to be green with it by giving it to the thrift shops so people can buy it and wear it, but it's crazy. I mean, it just has to stop. I think with the new economy and our new government, I think things are going to slow down for everybody. The Real Real is doing gangbusters. If you have stock, you're lucky. They're selling like crazy. I mean, because who can afford with everything that's going to happen? Who can afford to buy all this imported stuff? You know what I mean? You're going to have to be super rich. Plus, the quality of it really stinks. I mean, Louis Vuitton should be, they should be embarrassed on the crap that they're selling. And Hermes has got the market cornered with these Birkin and Kelly bags, which I think are so ridiculous. I mean, I remember them in the '80s. The only people that carried them were old women, who hadn't blown their nose in 20 years. I mean, it's such an ugly thing, and you have somebody like the Kardashians collecting it. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't really understand the bag at all. I think it's ugly and it's passe, and who cares? I don't care
It's
if you
the
have a.
marketing.
It's the
The
marketing
marketing.
is
We've been
crazy.
brainwashed. Yeah, we've been
It's really,
brainwashed
I mean,
again.
sorry Hermes, I love Hermes. And plus, none of these stores, like, so that guy from LVMH with Bernard Arnault, he's buying all these companies, right? He owns almost everything. I was a fan of Bulgari. I had been since the '70s. So I brought in a watch recently to their store in the design district in Miami. And what I wanted more links put on the band because it was tight. So she said, well, we don't make this watch anymore. I said, well, can you find out if you can get the links? Granted, I bought the watch in the '80s for like $3,500. I mean, that's not, it's not a Timex. But
Exactly.
she had me sit there in the store and she came out and she said, She said, I have good news and bad news. I said, well, give me the bad news first. The bad news is that we don't make this watch and we don't have these links anymore. I said, what kind of a store are you? I said, years ago, I was in Greece and I was swimming in the Aegean Sea and I got water in my watch. When I came back to New York with it, Bulgari gave me a loaner watch. They took my watch. They apologized profusely. They offered me lunch. They offered me
Oh
coffee.
my
I mean, you're paying 3,500 for a watch because you
goodness.
want customer service. There's no customer service anymore. So,
Done.
so she
But
said
what
the
was the
good
good
news,
news?
and she said, and the good news is it's a fresh day to buy a new watch. I said, you must be
No.
kidding me, lady.
See,
You must be kidding me. So Bernard Arnault and even Hermes, everybody is so money hungry. These stores were
yeah.
special because they were catered to the client. And they basically kissed your ass at Macy's window because
Mhm.
you were spending that kind of money. Now it's nothing. It's like, it's just a status symbol, but it's a stupid status symbol because I could look at the nearest bus stop and see people who are average people carrying those Louis Vuitton bags and fake Hermes bags. And so what? So they're carrying the fakes. Who cares? It's the same baloney. You know what I mean? It's like, what's special? How special are you? So, as far as like, and look at the secondary market. I mean, if you look at the real, what they're selling Hermes bags for, it's unbelievable. They're selling bags for $20,000. I mean, in the '80s, those bags were like $800. I mean, now they're like 20 and 30,000. I'm sorry about going off on Hermes. I love Hermes, but that nothing is what it used to be as
I
far as
hear you.
customer service. So
I
that's
hear you.
really sad for me, And the people that buy it are, I don't know. I don't know. Do they status symbol? I don't know what it
Yes,
is.
it's a status symbol.
All these companies anyway, where they really make their money today? On
In
fragrance. On
fragrances.
fragrance. Because look, they're selling it everywhere on planes. They're selling it in Timbuktu. They're selling it off market. They're selling it here. They make billions and trillions of dollars on fragrance.
Yes,
That's where
it's
they're
true.
really making the money. Fashion equals fragrance, and
So
welcome to
true.
2025.
Exactly. Well, tell me this. Tell me this. Sustainability isn't just about fabric, it's about legacy, since you're talking
Of
about the
course.
cloth.
I mean, look at like when I was really doing this, Kate Moss was one of my biggest customers, and she loved Halston. She looked incredible in it. I mean, it was made for her. If Halston was alive to have met Kate Moss, I mean, she would have been, forget about Pat Cleveland and Chris Royer. It would have been Kate Moss everywhere. A lot of noticing online are like collecting it and they know exactly the month and the year and they're archivists. So the new generation of their archivists now, they all have internet sites. Everyone's
Mhm,
collecting clothes. Everyone's
mhm.
collecting. It's
Yes,
unbelievable. It's unbelievable to me how the world is. And that's how it should be. There's enough clothing out there. And these people like Zara and H&M are destroying the world with all this fast fashion. And that other company that starts with an S, I forgot it.
yes. Let's not
Yes.
even mention it. I don't want to give them airplay. You know who
I know
we're talking about?
they're everywhere and like they're copying things right off the runway, and I don't understand it. And the crappiest fabrics. I mean,
Crappy.
crap. And I
It's
tried to buy some H&M stuff and it fell apart. You know what I mean? Like I can't even hold on to it as something archival. It disintegrates.
yep. So let me ask you this. How do you think your work contributes to reshaping how fashion values
Well, I
money?
think I left a green mark in this world. If I was to die tomorrow, I mean, like I
I
said,
love it.
I'm from a time before social media. I've been doing
Yeah,
this my whole life. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like I left a green mark. I felt good about it, that I was able to save these clothes. At one point, New York Magazine did like a 8-page story on me. And I was like, look, the dead designers are coming to me from beyond the grave and sending me where to go. I would jump on the subway and head out to like, somewhere in Brooklyn to some crazy thrift shop and walk in, and there would be a cachet of Giorgio St. Angelo. I was like, thank you,
Wow.
Giorgio. I love you. But it was like magic. I really feel some people call me magical, but maybe I am. I mean, you should see what has passed through my hands. It's just
I
been
hear I
amazing.
hear a book. I hear
Yeah.
a book
Well,
that
that's
needs
what why do you think I moved to New Orleans? That's what I'm doing here. I'm writing my memoirs. I figured if Anne Rice did it with interview with Keni Valenti, the legend in his own behind.
What advice to the next generations of creatives who want to stay bold and expressive like
Well,
the kids?
Well, well, first of all, unless the human body grows two more arms and three legs and two heads, the silhouette
Yeah,
is the same. The
right.
silhouette has gone every which way, up, down, sideways. So there's really not much to do. It's all about detailing and quality, quantity, quality control. And they're all being inspired by vintage, but that's where fashion has taken. If you would have asked me in 1977 what
Hmm.
fashion would be like in 2025, I thought we'd be having like magical fabric. I thought it would be in the fabrications where like you touch things and they light up and you
Right.
can change things. I saw
Yes.
some designers started to do stuff like that, but it has to be really special. Like they need
Mhm.
to go into technology more, and technology is getting better and better as we go along. So pretty soon you could maybe press a button in your handbag and change from work clothes to evening clothes just magically.
Exactly.
Wouldn't that be
Yes.
fun?
We're in the same space. I'm always saying that. Push a
I know.
button. Let me
I
jump
love.
out the window and fly down because I
I
pushed a
know.
button and
And
my
where's
jacket.
my goddamn car? I mean, I hate LA because I just can't take the traffic. Like it's
Yes.
just ridiculous. I mean, I was in LA like last year. I said, I'm never coming back here. The traffic is crazy. Get me out of here. There's so many people, but Miami is starting to get like LA now. It really
Yes.
is. It's so crowded. Yeah, it's but it's so interesting living in the French Quarter because there's a party every day. If I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm literally 2 blocks from Bourbon Street. I'm right in the French Quarter. So there's a party.
Fantastic. I love it. We like to give a shout out to what we call the Stitch Mob here.
Uh-huh.
So every episode, we spotlight a tastemaker helping to restitch the future of fashion. So,
Uh-huh.
Kennedy, who would be your Stitch Mob MVP of the week?
John Galliano.
Oh,
I
nice.
can't think of any
That
greater
one?
couturier in the world. I hope he goes back to Dior. I think he has left Margiela, and I
Good.
don't know where he's going. Everything is a big secret. But wouldn't
Yes.
it be fantastic if he did? I mean, look at some of that archives of Dior. I don't know if you remember it, but oh my God. Oh my God. I mean, I was talking to Pat McGrath about it like several months ago, and she was like, the makeup was crazy. He would be like, more makeup, more. They did the Egyptian collection. I said, Pat, it was genius. And she said, I know, but I thought it was crazy, but it worked out. Is a darling, darling, darling girl. She really is. I mean, and kids today, there's still clothes. It's a different kind. The 90s now are vintage, which is strange to me, like, oh, it's from 1995. I'm like, really? I remember that collection. So, so it's like all breaking down into like, so they copied Halston and everything, and then they did it in the 90s with all the copy. There was the end of fashion, really. It was just let's restyle vintage. And now in 2025, they're looking for that. So they're really, if they find an old Gucci, which it was really a Halston, I mean, if clothes could talk, they trickle down and trickle down and trickle down.
It's true.
But you should. I mean, I know a lady who worked for Milliken Fabrics. Her name is June
Mhm.
Roach. And she told me, like, she called me and she came to Miami and she said, take me thrift shopping. And she goes, this is better than Bloomingdale's. This is better than Bergdorf Goodman. Look at the selection here. So it really is
So is that an
exciting.
invitation? Are you inviting me down for a shopping
She,
extravaganza
let me tell
already?
you, she bought 10 garbage bags full of stuff and then she shipped them back. She's living in Rhode Island, but she found so much stuff. You could find cashmere sweaters. I mean, there's so many things. People are discarding clothes like crazy.
It's true.
I mean, why do we need another
Maybe
fashion
we
line?
need to maybe we need to stop producing for a while.
Yeah, I think
I
all of them should stop. And plus, it's so terrible. Some of these influences, and I look online, I'm on Instagram sometimes just pushing pages, and these kids like who buy all the designer clothes and they go to like Dior invites them to Paris to see the menswear. I look at the clothes and I'm like, what? This is a joke. Like sweatshirts and, it's basics in
yes.
better quality fabrics. Who cares that you're wearing it? If you were wearing it, it looks like you're wearing from, a sporting goods store.
Like streetwear.
Great.
Whether you're a vintage dealer preserving the rarest gems or a collector curating culture, your legacy is a testament to how style, history, and ethics can collide in the most meaningful way. We see you, we celebrate you, and your impact is stitched deeply into the fabric of this movement. Now, your conscious closet takeaway. If there's one thing to take with you today, it's this: fashion has a memory and it has meaning. Don't just wear something new, wear something with a story. Keep it bold, keep it ethical, and always stitch with intention. All right, everyone, that's a wrap for episode 4 of The Ethical Stitch. Big thanks to Keni Valenti for bringing the wisdom and the style. If you loved this conversation, hit subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and tag us at The Ethical Stitch and Michelle Alleyne Official. We're on all the major platforms and even the indie ones. And trust me, we're just getting started. Stay loud, stay curious, and always stay stitched in. Thanks for tuning into The Ethical Stitch. If you loved this episode, share it, rate it, and tag me at Michelle Alleyne Official. The revolution in fashion starts with awareness, and you're already a part of it. Until next time, keep it ethical.